for defense. And, well, we have veritable mirror match of deck types. We have Dish, Shadows, and Untamed on both sides. Um, I think that is a very powerful combination. I don't know exactly what these decks look like, but my most powerful deck is Dish, Shadows, and Untamed. As I mentioned earlier when we were watching, I don't remember which one we were watching, whether it was Viper or Stutzman Nick. I think it was Stutzman Nick. Um, Currently, we see that Stutzman Nick leads with 1 key to none, although Viper does have enough amber to forge a key. And Viper does, in fact, get to forge his first key. So now we are looking at 1 key to 1 with Stutzman Nick on 5 amber. Board state wise, I have to give a slight edge to Viper because he has 2 Ember Imps. 1 Ember Imp, it doesn't do much, but having 2, killing off 2 of them in a turn with only 2 plays is a little bit more difficult. And we see that he plays out the Long Fused Mines, 2 of them, which are Omni Artifacts to deal 3 damage to each creature not on a flank. Right now, that is only his creatures, but it is an insurance policy for future turns. We see Secret Needle being used to ping something. To ping Schuler. So Schuler is now at 4 damage. We see Stutzman Nick pulling another disc turn. And reaping with Charette and probably Schuler as well. And using the Dominator Bauble just because it's there. Did I miss a Control the Weak? Because that seemed like a very weak turn. No, I'm not sure. I mean, it does put him at 6 amber, but because Viper is on a Shadows deck, I wouldn't count on 6 amber being enough to forge a key. I'm not entirely sure what he's waiting on. Maybe he's got a Gateway to Dis that he's holding and wanting to have Viper build up a bigger board state before he uses. Or a Hecatomb, although that would seem counterproductive with this board state. Viper is responding to Stutzman Nick's no play and only reap turn with a disc call of his own, reaping 3 times, putting himself at 6. Or reaping twice and then fighting Charette to get the Ember back, putting him at 6. And then reaping with the Urchin through the Dominator Bauble. I assume it's going to reap. It could take out the Schuler. I don't think that would be wise. I think reaping would be better. And is he going to just concede the second? And he's going to use discard Fear and control the weak to make Stutzman Nick choose Dis again. This time we see that Dis is being forced via control the weak with a rather terrible board state. We suspect Stutzman Nick has either no discards in hand or a Gateway to Dis in hand. But he throws Schuler away, killing off one of the 2 Ember Imps, and passes turn back. Yeah, I'm very confused by Stutzman Nick's call of Dis the prior turn. Unless I missed something, this Dis turn was a voluntary no play. Yeah, because his opponent had called Shadows the turn before. It's possible it was a misclick, but disappointing if so. And Viper just calls Dis again and reaps across the board to get back up to 6 Ember. Stutzman Nick has to do something here to take Ember away, or this match is over. He plays out a Witch of the Eye. Regrowth can go and get the Big Twig. And Viper is saying good game. I'm not thinking of much in the way that Untamed has to steal or capture Ember that will prevent Viper from winning. I'm actually not coming up with anything at all. There is Stampede, but That requires at least 3 creatures on the board that you can use. And in fact, that is it. Stutzman Nick says good game. And now we move on to the finals, which will be Viper versus Rodballs. And this will be the final match of the evening. Thank you all for having watched the stream through with me. Hope my commentary has been informative. A grand student. And that's Viper and Stutzman Nick. Oddballs and Viper. As a reminder, Keyforge events are sponsored by 3 different sponsors. Burger Tokens, makers of some very fancy Keyforge keys that someday I will get myself a set of when I have money again. I just bought a house, so I have no money right now. But Tabletop Legion, makers of Keyforge deck boxes, and Orbits, makers of Keyforge tokens. I have a set of damage tokens coming my way from Orbits. The winner of tonight's tournament will actually be getting something from Keyforge Events' own store, I believe, which is a reseller of decks by faction. So you can go say, I like, well, in this, let's take this example, Dis, Shadows, and Untamed, and buy a random deck with those factions. They open up the boxes, sort them out by faction combination, and resell those factions. And here is the match with Rodballs versus Viper KFE. Hey, look, I joined the game before Viper did. Uh-oh. KFE. Alright. Let's refresh. Something's messing up with the Crucible online there. KFE. There we go. See? Sooner or later, this will work. I promise you. Fine. I'm not sure what's going on with this, but until Viper's here, it doesn't matter. We are just in a holding pattern. Let me see if I can find Keyforge Event Store real quick while we wait to plug it, because it is somewhat important that, well, the sponsors of these events are very much appreciated for, let's go to here, I think. For sponsoring these events, it brings the community together, gives people an incentive to play. And at keyforge.myshopify.com, I'll post this link over in the Twitch channel. Yeah, Keyforge Events is letting me know that Viper is MIA at the moment. But we have the shop of Keyforged Events. I believe this is Keyforged Events. He can correct me if I am wrong. Where you can come in, find decks with a faction that you want. Some of them sold out, like Brobnar, Dis, and Untamed. Or by, oh gosh, lots of these are sold out. By a combination of 5 decks together that are completely sealed. Or if you say want Brobnar, Sanctum, and Mars, get an unscanned, ready to go deck that all you know is what the factions are. Thereby letting you target what you would prefer to get rather than having the completely random nature of a sealed deck. I do believe they also sell sealed decks here. So if you just want to buy sealed decks, this is an excellent online retailer to go through. They are $9.95, which is basically retail. And you will see, well, important to note that tax is included. I don't believe shipping is, but since tax is already included in this price, the shipping is basically your tax, assuming you're shipping inside the continental US. And while I've been away, the game has started. So Viper has shown up, dropped a disc turn with, what was the first turn? Rodball's played Taliga, which is each time your opponent plays a creature, you gain an Ember. I assume that was feared off the board. It wasn't murdered, but feared off, and then Control the Weak is what is forcing Rodballs into a disc turn here. He fears the Schuler back and drops an Ember Imp to prevent Viper from playing more than 2 cards in a turn. And a second Ember Imp. Ooh, Viper. I'm sorry, your Control the Weak has not been the greatest of calls. Dis was half of his hand. When you play... Dis was 4 of the cards in his hand. When you play Control the Weak on turn 1, or in this case, turn 3, well, okay, sorry, on your turn 1, you don't have enough information to really give a good Control the Weak call. And it shows here with having 4 of the cards, 5 of the cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the cards in his hand, because one of them got bounced. B, Dis. It's pretty painful for a Control the Weak. Control the Weak can be a super powerful card if you have seen a couple of turns and have a good idea of what the board state suggests your Control the Weak should be and what ratio of cards are in your opponent's hand. If they just played a turn and played, say, 2 cards from a faction, it's unlikely they have more than that they didn't play or discard. And letting them play that faction again out of the goodness and kindness of your heart can make them have some really weak turns as a follow-up. But we see Scout being played, and since there were no creatures in play, what did he fight with the Ancient Bear? So he played the Ancient Bear, played Scout. He should have been able to fight with... it's not ready in fight with. It's just fight with. So much like the Dominator Bauble doesn't let you use an exhausted creature, you can't fight with an exhausted creature. Okay. Sorry, I was slightly confused by how Scout worked. So no, the bear doesn't get to fight. And we see Rodballs taking his Untamed turn, throwing out Flaxia, EC2 Amber, and a Taliga back on the board, ready to reap the rewards of Viper's next creature-laden turn. Viper is considering his options carefully between probably just Distant Shadows, and he calls Dis. I say it's unlikely he was going to call Untamed because one Untamed creature on the board isn't really that powerful. He could fight and take out one of the Ember Imps, but that would be about it. And we see him drop his own Ember Imp and a Schuler, and then fight with the Ancient Bear anyways. Probably to take out one of the 2 Ember Imps with the Dominator Bauble. And since he had only played 2 Untamed cards in the previous turn, odds are you don't draw 2 of the same faction to replace them, so it would have been unlikely for him to have had any Untamed. So that's why I was saying he's going to call you the Dis or Shadows. And then he discards Pandemonium because he's capped on the number of cards he can play that turn by the other Ember Imp that he wasn't able to kill. Double Ember Imp is a pretty vicious combination to have on the board, particularly when you control the board state. We now see Rodballs getting the turn passed back to him. Neither side has managed to forge their first key yet. He did get 2 Ember from Taliga when Viper played out the Ember Imp and the Schuler, which is how he is at 4 when he was only at 2 last turn. 3. Oh, the Schuler stole one. Okay. That was why he was at 4, not 5. Uh, Rodballs calls Untamed again. Reaps with the 2 creatures. Uh, Plays Curiosity for a free amber. And then Nature's Call to bounce all. He didn't bounce. Oh, he bounced his Flaxia so he can play Flaxia again and get that 2 amber. Rodballs is now sitting on 8. To Viper's 3. Viper needs to come up with something this turn to control it. He has a Ember Imp and Ancient Bear in his hand. So there's a Disc creature and an Untamed creature. The Dominator Bauble won't do him any good this turn because the only creature he has in play is Dis. And using Dominator Bauble to use a creature you're already allowed to use doesn't do you any good. Now, on the other hand, what does Viper do? Shadows could have some excellent outs for him. With Rodballs at 10 amber and him at 3, the obvious is bait and switch. Too much to protect would also be quite useful, followed by an urchin that would then drain Rodballs out of key forging position. Outside of that, Dis doesn't have great amber control. It's got the Flash of Broken Dreams, but that won't be of any use to him because it won't come into play ready if he has one, and he has it in hand. Pandemonium, we've already seen him discard, but that wouldn't be able to do enough unless he could also play out 4 more creatures. And that wouldn't work because of Taliga, which would just give him the amber of all the creatures that he was going to capture amber with. So even if he had another Pandemonium and enough creatures, that still wouldn't be sufficient. I guess in that scenario, he would just fight with Schuler and kill Taliga before it happened. Shush. No pointing out my logical flaws. We see that Viper does in fact call Dis, and does in fact kill Taliga with Schuler. Plays back out the Ember Imp. Question is, what else will he be able to do? And the answer is nothing. I obviously don't know what's in his hand, but I have to wonder if there wasn't a better option than that. Yes, Taliga was a problem, and possibly that was the only way to play and not give Rodballs a giant stack of amber for playing all of his creatures. But that still seems pretty weak. And we see Rodballs reaping with Flaxia and then playing Full Moon into a Hunting Witch. And that's the end of that turn. Because he can only play 2 creatures. Or 2 cards. I wonder if Rodballs had more stuff he could have done if he had realized the Ember Imp was on the board. Because Flaxia could have killed the Ember Imp instead of reaping. Because it didn't, I suspect those were the only 2 Untamed cards in his hand. And he's taking the small incremental approach, not building up a giant amber pool to prevent bait and switch from coming down and making a massive play. If you don't have 10 or 15 amber, bait and switch isn't nearly as effective. We do see Viper this time calling Shadows and using an Urchin to steal 1 to get Rodballs out of key forging range. Rodballs now at 5 amber, Viper at 6. But the Hunting Witch is still alive, which is somewhat surprising. With, again, Viper only able to play 2 cards because of the Ember Imp. I wonder if there wasn't something he might have been able to do to take care of the Hunting Witch if the Ember Imp wasn't a concern. It's interesting with both sides being constrained by Ember Imps. I figure that Rodballs here is going to use his Terror to kill the Ember Imp and remove that 2 card per turn restriction. His hand may not have anything more than 2 cards, so it's not as critical. But over time, that will become an increasingly large pain point for both sides. And there is a pandemonium on Rudball's side, with 2 amber being captured from him while he captures 4 from Viper. And a Mind Barb that takes out that old ancient bear that we've seen him play before but got returned to hand. And then reaps with Ember Imp. And does he fight with the Terror or reap with the Terror? He reaps with the Terror. Interesting. Neither side seems concerned about the Ember Imps. This is where I wish I could see the players' hands to understand better into the mentality of why they're letting the Ember Imps live. It may just be that they are quite content to reap with their 2 creatures and then play 2 cards every turn. But, and there we go. Schuler takes out one of the Ember Imps. And the other Ember Imp will reap. Oh no, take out the Hunting Witch. Okay, I can see that being a valuable and useful play. And then the Dominator Bauble is being used to reap with the Urchin. And Rodballs manages to forge his second key, putting Viper in a very precarious position, down 2 keys to none. Again, as we saw earlier, it is not impossible to come back from this deficit, but it is going to be rough. Once you're down 2 keys, Rodballs can now play much more aggressively and not have to worry about stopping Viper from forging keys on any given turn. Playing more to get his key forged than to ensure that Viper doesn't forge a key. Rodballs calls Untamed. Reaps with Flaxia, plays a Dust Pixie for 2 more Ember. Needs 1 more Ember. Plays a second Dust Pixie to get to 7 Ember. And is now threatening and plays a Regrowth. I think he might have played that in the wrong order. He picks up Taliga. And plays Taliga down. I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't have used the Regrowth for the Hunting Witch first, and then drop the 2 Dust Pixies. That would have put you at 2 more Ember. You'd be at 10 now. Yes, your opponent could have bait and switch, but even a bait and switch when your opponent was on 5 and you're at 10, you'd still be over the 6th threshold to be able to forge your 3rd key. On the other hand, Viper has called Untamed, which is notoriously bad for Amber control. Rodballs is sitting on 9 Amber. I'm not sure there's going to be much that Viper can do to stop the 3rd key from being forged here. We see a Way of the Bear come down. That's gaining Amber for Viper. But as I said earlier, Rodballs was in the position to be aggressive. Chose to be aggressive because of the 2 key advantage. And Viper just doesn't have a response. And there's the good game. Good game, you two. Congratulations to Rodballs. Congratulations to Rodballs is our tournament champion of the night. He has taken the cutthroat, no holds barred single elimination tournament on this Wednesday night and is the champion. And I believe we'll be getting, again, Keyforge events, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he is getting credit for a deck from the keyforge.myshopify.com, Keyforge decks, where you can choose a deck with the faction combination that you would like, providing that they have them in stock. Always, of course, providing that it's available. Or choose just a simple sealed deck. Also sponsoring Keyforge events are Orbits, orbits.com, makers of Keyforge tokens and other game tokens. Let's go to the Keyforge. Nobody cares about Arkham Horror. Supplemental damage tokens, supplemental amber tokens, all high quality construction, much more durable than the existing cardboard tokens, all well worth their value, and of course fancy keys. And then the third sponsor is Burger Tokens. I'm not sure what the URL on that is. Let's see. Keyforge. Burger Tokens. There we are. Wow, some very nice Keyforge tokens with some fancy keys, bit more stylized tokens, power tokens, stun tokens, complete set of tokens for your Keyforge game for $20. And an upgrade pack in case you need more damage or chains or armor or power tokens. And then, of course, tokens for other games as well. But overall, congratulations to Rodballs. The 2 Ember Imps takes him the distance. We saw 2 games by him, and in both games he had both Ember Imps on the board, and that really made it brutal. And there's some good sportsmanship going back and forth between Rodballs and Viper. Viper saying that he hadn't seen Taliga before. Taliga is an amazing card. It's Hunting Witch, but for your opponent. Honestly, I think Hunting Witch is a better card because you can play it and get some value out of it without a response. Taliga, your opponent is always going to have a response, the ability to have a response to it before you can get value out of it. But it is a top tier must kill card. But that will do it for the tournament tonight. One last look at the challenge standings. We see that Rodballs is in fact victorious over the tournament. His road to victory took him through Aunt Treasy into Michael of Gilead versus Pokalope. Defeated Noam before finally vanquishing the Viper to take down the tournament. Congratulations. And again, if you are unfamiliar with the Keyforge event server, Discord server, I will be putting a link in the video description on YouTube, and I will link it once more in this channel. I'm making the broad-based assumption that that invite link is valid. If it's not, let me know. I also am stealing an idea from one of the other streamers in the Discord channel. The credit for this idea goes to... Let me make sure I actually get the name right. Stream team. Was it Chaos Control? I think it's Chaos Control. Yeah, somewhere up here. Seriously? There it is. Yeah, I'll just say Chaos Control. It's either Chaos Control or Bizarro David, but the idea is a bad deck idea. So if you have a bad deck that you own and would like to see if somebody else can pilot it better or watch somebody else get absolutely destroyed while piloting it, let me know. Shoot me the Keyforge game link to that deck, and I will load it into Crucible, and I will play at least 3 to 5 matches with it and see if I can make a terrible deck a little bit better for you by showing potential strategies and synergies, or get destroyed and concede that in fact there are some terrible decks that I cannot pilot and win with. Just shoot me a note in comments or private messages, and the next time I stream, if I have anyone that has suggested a deck to try out that is terrible, I will stream with that and we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, if you've enjoyed the stream, click the subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, also subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you very much, and good night.